Pode começar, professor.
In Brazil, it's not yet the case, I think. Yeah? It's not yet, for you, it's not yet like that.
We can start now.
Nós vamos começar, Marcelo?
Sim, pode começar, já está ao vivo.
Ok.
Ja. Gewoon zwart. Gewoon zwart.
Damos início aos trabalhos de hoje. Quero dar uma boa tarde a todos. É uma alegria imensa poder abrir os trabalhos da quarta Meduc. Então, é com imensa alegria e com emoção que damos início à quarta mostra de pesquisa em educação, organizada e promovida pelos mestrandos, doutorandos e egressos do programa de pós-graduação em educação da Universidade de Passo Fundo. Como carinhosamente é concebida, a quarta Meduc tem como tema o direito à educação no século XXI, formação humana e cultura digital em perspectiva. Trata-se de um tema basilar, instigante e provocativo para refletir sobre a pesquisa e as práticas de educação do presente e do futuro. Num cenário marcado pelo desmonte da escola pública, pelos frequentes ataques à ciência e ao pensamento crítico, e pelo empresariamento e mercantilização da educação, debater o direito à educação se torna um compromisso ético, um desafio inadiável e uma responsabilidade política de primeira grandeza. Além de colocar em diálogo as pesquisas que estão sendo desenvolvidas por mestrandos, por doutorandos e também por egressos, a mostra busca problematizar os desafios cotidianos ligados à educação, como a participação de pesquisadores nacionais e internacionais em análises, conferências e mesas temáticas sobre o direito à educação, uma vez que vem sendo afetada pelos efeitos do neoliberalismo e do neoconservadorismo. Para dar início aos trabalhos de hoje, temos a honra e a satisfação de contar com a contribuição de Jan Masschelein e Maarten Simons, dois reconhecidos pesquisadores da Bélgica, que têm se notabilizado em realizar profundas pesquisas sobre a escola, a pedagogia e a democracia no cenário atual. Dois dos seus livros, Em Defesa da Escola, uma Questão Pública, e A Pedagogia, a Democracia e a Escola, além de diversos outros escritos, têm sido presença constante nos estudos e pesquisas de professores e alunos do PPG-Edu e estão nos auxiliando na compreensão desse cenário contraditório, complexo e plural que nos desafia permanentemente. De imediato, nosso profundo agradecimento pelo aceite de estar conosco na tarde de hoje, que certamente ficará para a história do nosso programa de pós-graduação em educação e também para a Universidade de Passo Fundo. Sejam bem-vindos e desde já desejamos um bom trabalho. De imediato, passo a palavra ao Dr. Evandro Consalter, que irá dividir a coordenação dos trabalhos dessa sessão, para que eu mesmo possa apresentar brevemente os dois pesquisadores. Aproveito para agradecer ao Evandro pela mediação que tornou possível a presença dos dois pesquisadores.
Obrigado, professor Altair, muito obrigado. É uma honra poder estar participando da Conferência Inaugural desta quarta MIDUC, organizada pelos nossos colegas, maravilhosamente bem organizada, e de imediato nosso cumprimento a todos que estiveram envolvidos com esta equipe fantástica de organização, e, em especial, nossos cumprimentos a esses dois grandes pesquisadores e também seres humanos de uma generosidade imensa. No nosso primeiro contato, imediatamente eles aceitaram o convite e não mediram esforços para estar conosco hoje, debatendo sobre o direito à educação. Eu, então, passo a apresentar um breve currículo dos nossos convidados, pois eles dispensam apresentação. Falo do professor Jan Masschelein e Maarten Simons. O professor Dr. Jan Masschelein é professor de Filosofia da Educação e diretor do Laboratório de Educação e Sociedade na Universidade de Leuven, Bélgica. A sua pesquisa se concentra explicitamente em repensar o papel do público das escolas e das universidades e a particularidade de uma perspectiva pedagógica. Tem 2 livros traduzidos para o português com Maarten Simons, Em Defesa da Escola, uma questão pública, e A Pedagogia, a Democracia e a Escola, ambos pela editora Autêntica. O professor Maarten Simons, professor de Política e Teoria Educacional no Laboratório de Educação e Sociedade da Universidade de Leuven. Seus principais interesses são a política educacional, os novos mecanismos de poder e a aprendizagem ao longo da vida. Também tem 2 livros traduzidos para o português, dentre tantas obras e publicações que os dois possuem. O Em Defesa da Escola, uma questão pública, e A Pedagogia, Democracia e a Escola, ambos pela editora Autêntica. Professor Masschelein, Professor Simons, welcome to our university. We look forward to listening to your conference. Welcome, please.
Okay, I hope you can hear us. Yeah, okay. So for us it's evening, for you it's still in the afternoon, I think, or even not yet. So thank you very much for inviting us to this conference and to offer us the opportunity to present some reflections on school education. So we will make use of some elements out of our new book, which is on looking after school, which is a critical analysis of personalization in education, and you can also find it as a free download in English. We will give you the web address later on. We will try to share the screen. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you can see. Yeah, you can see it, I think. Yeah. So I also want to apologize that. So we are, of course, will speak out of our condition, and it might be that we say some things which would not apply for the Brazilian condition. That is possible. So we apologize for that. So we speak from this context, although we have noticed previously that often the situation here is not so different as the one in Brazil. So that we hope that it is also in this case. So where it is for sure too early to evaluate how the pandemic actually might transform our ways of doing and living, it is not too early to see that during the health crisis, schools were an important focus of attention. On the one hand, with the closure of schools in many countries, there was a massive mobilization of digital technology to enable distance learning. So education has become home delivery. Education entered the family space through small or large screens and not infrequently in a pre-programmed, adaptive and personalized learning environment. We do not claim to know the impact of the pandemic or to enter a discussion regarding what is called the new or old normal, but we believe that even before the health crisis, normality was already disappearing as a dominant reference for our educational thinking and acting, or at least was being overshadowed by something else, the glorification of the unique person and the profiling drive to do so, which we think is articulated in the new educational organization that was already on its way before the pandemic, one that performs a shift from the modern normalizing educational institution, where it is about the individual related to the norm and the desire to be normal, towards the current day personalizing learning environment, where it is about the uniqueness of the learner and the need for recognition of one's performance and competences related to a permanent profiling. We don't know whether this shift could be seen as part of a radical transition. But the way the digital pervaded education in the pandemic seems to sustain a certain transition and to push the tendency to put the learner at the center, up to the point that some claim that the pandemic should be welcomed to finally update or simply outdate the school. But at the same time, there was and is also doubt concerning this shift towards this personalized learning environment. It has become clear that families differ in terms of learning opportunities they provide, that efficient and effective digital learning does not necessarily honor principles of equality, that digital distance learning may allow students to choose where and when to learn, but that this freedom of choice gets in the way of another freedom, of attentive and sustained practice and study. With the demise of school, we have, one could say, also rediscovered school. We have become aware of how this inclination to make learning digital and personalized is or might actually be deschooling school, and that if so, we lose something that we might be willing to defend and to reinvent or redesign. We, being not only the adults that decide to organize school, but also the youngsters that were inhabiting them. In fact, what critics of school education, that is those equating school education with an old-fashioned, boring, inefficient, outdated form of learning, never could have imagined to be possible, occurred. It were also youngsters that came to the defense of school education. And some might say that they just want to see their friends, but our hypothesis is that these youngsters are pointing to something existential about school education, which cannot simply be replaced by digital learning environments and social networks. What they miss, we believe, is a particular experience of freedom, of equality and world, which is offered by school when school actually happens, and to which we claim they have a right as a new generation, and which we argue is worth more than one struggle. Indeed, from a pedagogical point of view, school is a particular gathering of people and things that enables a particular kind of learning, scholastic learning, which is learning under conditions of freedom, equality, and formation. And so let us try to clarify what this is about, not only to understand what youngsters are missing, but also to be able to start to address the issue of education in post-COVID times. It is not offering a theory of school, but rather a polemical intervention trying to give voice to the school and its scandal. Indeed, the scholastic scandal that has led to all kinds of taming strategies from its invention is that school enacts the pedagogical assumption that everyone can learn everything, which means that we do not know what the mind and body is capable of, and it is not naturally pre-given what it should learn or has to learn. School sends the message that our form of life is always also the contingent result of learning and formation, the contingent outcome of what is possible, the possible outcome of undefined school work. School, hence, is not about acquiring social identities, but in fact interrupts all kinds of identifications and determinations and the predefined destinies which are associated with it. In our book, Defense of the School, we have tried to describe how school, through its operations of separation, suspension, profanation, attention formation, and grammatization, establishes exactly the indications of the indications of how the conditions of freedom, equality, and formation that characterize scholastic learning are actually enacted in school, starting from the example of school talk.
To understand how school talk enacts these conditions, it is helpful to refer to what Bruno Latour says about love talk. Bruno Latour shows how a sentence such as "I love you" is very banal, but how, when truly said in a very concrete situation, the sentence has the power to affect or transform both the listener and the speaker, and to modify time and space. The sentence changes the space because I'm saying, I was away, but now I'm near to you. I love you. It also changes time because when I say it, it offers the possibility of a new time to begin, the time of our love. And it also changes the past because it makes us think different about the past, our past. So this very banal sentence is transforming time and space and makes that something becomes a matter of concern. We can say something similar about school talk. So not love talk, but school talk. It is a distinctive kind of speech, including a particular vocabulary, but perhaps foremost a distinctive mode of expression and tonality. Truly scholastic speech, school talk, is affecting space, time, and matter, and creates the conditions to become a school student and a school teacher, and to confront worlds. And this transformative force can be captured in three variations of a single paradigmatic expression, the expression try. So let me first say something about the first example or variation of try. And imagine that you say, as a teacher, try to your students. There are perhaps few other banal phrases that are used so frequently in a classroom. It's an order, yet at the same time an expression of concern. It expresses authority, right? You say try, but also contains an invitation. Try clearly assumes that someone is not yet able, but it foremost appeals to a becoming able. In fact, there are often reasons to assume that one doesn't have to try. Sociological, psychological, or neurological reasons, or how one performed before, even students themselves saying that this is not for them, nothing that they could or like to do. School talk is about saying, school talk is about saying try, despite all these reasons. It assumes an ability, and it even creates the experience of being able. One could say that someone is turned into a student when accepting the invitation to try. At least when becoming a student is understood in terms of experiencing an ability to do something or to begin something, which is the experience of, in our words, pedagogical freedom. The statement try interrupts the chronological timeline where the past defines the future. The students that say, or the student that say, yes, I will try, is drawn into the present moment as a moment of possibility, neither defined by the past nor by the future. While the invitational part of the expression addresses the ability, the authoritative part is oriented towards the will of the student. The teachers who say try to someone else is in fact willing that the others be willing to try. But what makes the willing of the teacher convincing is the belief in the ability of the students, which the phrase, when truly said in a concrete situation, expresses. But what is this willing about? To ask someone to try something implies to ask someone to do an effort and to engage in particular kinds of study activities or exercises. But these activities have a sort of lightness to them because they are part of an attempt, just an attempt. Here we might see how the expression try also has the power to transform the inhabited space. What is created is a kind of safe space, in the sense that there are no specific consequences attached to whatever the effort leads to results or not. In fact, the only consequence would be the invitation to try again. As a student, one inhabits a space where the efforts and activities are meaningful in themselves. The terms practice or exercise exactly refer to this study effort. And what is at stake in school practice and exercise is hence a particular kind of freedom. And we want to stress here, this is not a freedom of choice. School practice refers to typical school work, such as reading words aloud, preparing and doing a class presentation, learning foreign words or mathematical formula by heart, doing body exercises, making drawings, to name just a few examples. This schoolwork requires serious effort, but its meaning cannot be derived or defined from the outcome of the work. From the viewpoint of economic or social utility, the products and hence also the work are somehow useless. It is just perceived as mere schoolwork. The value, however, resides on the side of the working student. The expression of undefined work of freedom, it's an expression by Michel Foucault, articulates very well what is at stake in schoolwork. School practice or exercise always has this indetermination. It is defined neither by an input nor by an output. It is work which is undefined. At this point, the engagement with grammar in schoolwork is crucial. Not only the grammar of language, but also the grammar of the world, of nature, of arts, probably also of the digital. The grammar is not defining, it's not a norm, it's not a specific rule. Grammar is not defining, but it is opening up possibilities. This is not to say that schoolwork does not have an aim. Schoolwork on writing, on reading, on calculation, on drawing is about creating conditions for someone to become able to write, to read, to calculate, to draw. These school-specific aims of literacy, however, are different from attempts to produce writers, mathematicians, artists, etc. Schoolwork, in our view, is about becoming able and giving oneself a shape, not about predetermining the actualization of these abilities in view of a predefined form or image of the educated subject. The school is not about producing writers or artists or mathematicians. It's becoming able to write, to calculate, to read. The second variation of this paradigmatic expression, try, is try again. Try again, also you. So imagine that as a teacher, you are saying this to a student or a group of students. This expression articulates a sense of optimism, a belief in the student's abilities notwithstanding someone's past. It also expresses patience. Try again. Try again is about giving someone a second chance, or even a third or fourth chance. It means reinforcing the belief that everyone can learn everything, and intervening to protect the student from the influence of natural social forces that seek to bind the student to her past and to define the student's abilities. The verbal intervention, try again, interrupts the linear timeline where the student's past determines the student's future. This expression, try again, empties the space from all sorts of profiling and diagnosing. It creates a space-time where someone can become a student again, experiencing becoming able to do something, experiencing this becoming able. What the instruction try again does is inscribe equality as a condition of school learning. This equality follows from the typical freedom of school. If the social position of young people is not defining the future from the outset or from the onset, this means that everybody, regardless of where they come from or where they are, must have the chance to practice and to find themselves a proper form. The equality created through the expression try again, also you, try again, is different from approaches that first make students unequal by defining or redefining who and what they are in social and natural terms. And second, by predefining learning trajectories based on the observed natural or social necessities. The message in try again is not to define or to refine, but to undefine. So not defining, not redefining, but undefining. The traces of someone's past are not ignored or forgotten. The expression try again makes clear that they no longer cast a shadow on someone's present abilities. School does not address children starting from their familial, economic, social, cultural background or their abilities or disabilities. If school would do that, this would be de-schooling school, making their past defining their future. By contrast, the starting point of school is to address young people at their ability for shaping their lives themselves.
And let's now look at the third variation of the try this. Try this is likewise also crucial to see what school learning is about. It points at something outside, something not yet part of someone's life world. Try this contradicts the idea that school learning is only about the person of the student. It ensures that giving shape to oneself through school work always passes through the outside. The instruction orients the student's effort towards specific schoolwork and specific subject matter. The expression assumes that there is not always a natural inclination towards doing something new, so necessitating an intervention and serious effort. Specifying what should be tried means defining the effort, the activities, and the abilities involved without actually defining schoolwork. It remains an invitation to give something a try. Try this. School learning enables students to read, write, and calculate, but this form of learning does not try to determine the exact usage of this reading, writing, and calculating by trying to shape students according to a predefined form of life. It are the grammars of worlds that are made available, for instance, in the terms of the alphabet or numbers, but also code and algorithms in case of the world of technology, or gestures in the case of sports. They do not define the work of freedom, although without doubt there have been many attempts already to impose a particular form of the literate citizen or the educated subject, but that is to de-school school. And as we said, the scholastic try this states that school learning is not about the person of the student. It is not student-centered, but it is about something of the world. A highly present educational discourse seems to send another message. The message that it is about you, about your person. And digital learning environments are indeed strongly personalized and personalizing. Think about the personal computer, the personal profile, the personal learning paths, the personalized learning analytics. Moreover, they are available at will everywhere, anytime, whereas school, in contrast, is a very particular, separated time-space with a particular collective and bodily gathering of generations, a time-space which is not personalized, not centered around the person, but around a particular disclosure of worlds through schoolwork. It is actually time in which we are free for the world, and the world to be distinguished from society, and free for the world. This is precisely the way in which Hannah Arendt translates the Greek skole, so as time in which we are free for the world. Free for the world means to be temporary, freed from one's family, no longer being son or daughter, but student. Temporarily freed from economic imperatives, not being an apprentice in a real labor situation, but being a student. To be temporarily freed from societal expectations, so not being a permanent learner governed by societal forces or adult ideals. And today, it seems to mean also to be protected against what we could call the increasing terror and the tremendous noise of the social that is actually strengthened by the digital and especially the social media. Indeed, it seems that the digital apparatus and the social media, at least as they function today, or largely function today, increase the importance of social recognition, of social comparison, and of social positioning, so which we could take together as the importance of personal profiling, as a source for the experience of a meaningful existence, and especially for those who are called the millennials who are entering our schools. This seems to imply a longing for visibility, for continuous feedback and permanent connection in order, as Facebook once, one of the slogans of Facebook was, to share everything with everyone, in order also to manage and add to one's personal profile, to add personal performances, preferences, opinions, experiences, in order to show who you are, to show one's personality. It creates the feeling of being obliged to perform on the virtual scenes. And it seems to feed, on the one hand, an existential anxiety for not being socially recognized in one's personal characteristics and choices or options, and on the other hand, to generate an increasing boredom in some sense, some sort of indifference or despair confronted with the options that the internet and the profiles of others seems to present. As such, it risks to deprive youngsters of the possibility of finding what we could call a worldly source of meaningfulness. So not a social one, but a worldly source of meaningfulness and of an experience of freedom and joy, which is not related to personal choice or options, but to exposure and to care for a common world. In this social atmosphere, the school, as far as it operates indeed as a pedagogical workplace, and so not as a personalized learning environment, offers a freed space-time where choice, social recognition, so that means the affirmation of your existence through social approval of others, and the demand for profiling, so for constant comparison also and visibility, are not central. a safe space, as we said before, to some extent also protected from visibility and traceability. The pedagogical workplace does not offer a world on everyone's personal scale. Therefore, it does not start from these differences, nor does it emphasize them. It opens up worlds, the worlds of language, of mathematics, or nature, arts, and sports, in such a way that these worlds can begin to speak to me, to interest me, to form me. It is a place where the experience of meaning is not primarily mediated by the social recognition of choices and the visibility of performances, but where that experience is mediated by the work that takes place there and the form in which it takes place, practicing, studying, trying as a form of work. This is the work in which one knows oneself confronted with a world that appeals and invites, simultaneously in its beauty, its enigma, but also in its challenge, its resistance and objectivity, and in which one experiences being able to participate or to begin to participate in that world, so to begin to belong to that world. It is a work that, you could say, silences the noise of the social traffic, as Michel Serres says, and that let us hear the music of the world that gives us another source of lasting meaning and hence of formation. Of course, in a pedagogical workplace, there are also placed a certain desire of being seen, of being visible. But here that does not mean to being recognized in one's uniqueness, but rather it means to receive attention and care in one's practicing, in one's trying, one's studying. So a pedagogical workplace creates a time of practicing, studying, trying as freed time. It is a special time for the transfer or sharing of knowledge and abilities. It is not the time of transfer in function of socialization, which is mostly about speeding it up, about getting learning gains as fast, efficient, and smooth as possible. School time, on the contrary, is a time that simultaneously slows down and intensifies the transfer, because a pedagogical place is always the place where what is shared is also, as we like to say, put on the table for study and offered in a grammatized way. There is always that interruption of the transmission. And in pedagogical terms, it is precisely that interruption. You could say the in-between of the table and the artificiality of the grammars. And so not a direct, natural, frictionless transmission from head to head or hand to hand that allows a new generation to appear and a pedagogical freedom to be enacted that also can renew the world. So to summarize, school spreads the message that who you are is not just a product of social, physical, historical forces or of the context, but also the contingent result of study and exercise, as a practice of encounter with worlds and as an undefined work of freedom. And the scholastic conditions make youngsters able to give shape and direction to this freedom by disclosing worlds in a particular grammatized, but also in a seducing way, a speaking way, while offering a certain protection against the social and societal forces that entail socialization and the economic forces that enhance marketization and capitalization of their activities and attention.
Okay, as we mentioned in the beginning, in our pandemic times, also children and students came to defense of school education, to the defense of school education. At least that was the case in Belgium. They wanted to go back to school. It seems as if they were able to point at something existential about school education, something which cannot simply be replaced by online digital learning environments and social networks. Could we maybe say that youngsters have experienced today what it means to be closed off from world exposure? And could we say, maybe, that exactly for that reason, what they miss in missing school is the experience of a certain freedom and a certain equality. Not the freedom of choice, but the freedom of being able. And not a juridical or social equality, but the equality of being a pupil or a student like all others, which means the equality of being undefined by family, nature, social background, or redefined images of a desired end. Hence, young people seem to express that a school not only allows one to see each other and to make friends, to be with peers, but also allows them for a certain liberation from their friends and peers. A liberation from being locked down in the social sphere, either with or without social media. The sphere of concern for recognition, with the likes, the views, the recognition of identity or performance, and of the concern for personal emotional states that in the end can never be really shared. Maybe children and students experience that what school does is to offer access to worlds. Give them the opportunity in class, through work and play, to discover and to dwell in worlds. And so we have to ask whether the way in which the digital is actually shaping the present of education is not depriving youngsters of the time space of pedagogical freedom and equality, and of the disclosing of and belonging to a shared world. Can we already imagine new educational practices with the digital that generate free time or time for the world? Digital practices that would interrupt the defining forces of the past and of the social background? And can we protect the new generation from the forces of the market? Can we make that these practices embody school talk? Speak a language that is inviting and seducing, which is saying, try or try again, and not do this, and if this, then do that. New practices that make us belong to a shared world and not locked up in our world, our social world. The digital allows an access to knowledge and skills, that's for sure. It allows to be connected to others to an extent which never existed before. But we think that the digital experience that accompanied the pandemic, that was related to the pandemic, has led youngsters to the awareness of what we appreciate so much about school. Hence, the question is how the digital can contribute to the reimagining and reinvention of the school as a space-time that realizes pedagogical freedom and equality and make the worlds are not only seen or swiped, but get the chance to form. But we think that this reinvention of school with the digital will require to consider what forms of work, schoolwork, can help to make freedom, equality, and formation possible in the digital times of the image. As schoolwork is about grammars, this means that we have at least to consider today how to make available the basic grammar of the internet, the basic grammar of the social relations as mediated by digital tools, as well as the grammar of sharing and inhabiting a planet. It will further require, of course, passionate teachers in order to undo the privatizing, accelerating, and personalizing logics of learning platforms, to interrupt the socializing forces of the social media, and to make the music of the world heard again. Come to the conclusion, putting the school at the center of our concern and invoking the right to school means, according to us, putting the world at the center. And this means doing justice to the coming generation in a pedagogical way, to make it possible for young people to become students and make it possible for the world to be taken care of. And we think that this is worth at least a few school struggles. Thank you.
Muito obrigado, professor Masschelein, professor Simons, por nos brindarem com esta fantástica, provocativa conferência que nos inspira e nos instiga a pensar no futuro da educação. Nós temos pessoas aqui acompanhando essa conferência, professores do ensino superior, da educação básica, de diferentes lugares do Brasil e de outros países, inclusive nossos vizinhos aqui da América do Sul, que são nossos parceiros de grupo de pesquisa, que socializam informações e angústias também conosco e estão acompanhando pela transmissão no nosso canal no YouTube. E para isso, então, eu gostaria de chamar a professora doutora Luciane Sturm, ela que coordena a divisão internacional da Universidade de Passo Fundo, para fazer um pouco dessa síntese do que as pessoas que estavam lá do outro lado estavam comentando, enquanto que vocês faziam essa fantástica conferência para nós.
Hello, it's really a pleasure to listen to you both. It was a very provocative talk, and I think we could reflect a lot about all the struggles, all the forces that we have at school, and how we need to think about our roles as educators, professors, and here our audience, as Evandro mentioned, we have different researchers, teachers, lots of teachers that really are working in different schools here in Brazil, and professors and students. Some are just, we could say that it's not just students, but they only study at the moment. For sure, they want to be professors. They want to be at schools. And we can say that we have lots of things to reflect, considering your talk, considering what you have said to us. And as you mentioned in the beginning that you were not really, you didn't know about the real situation of Brazil related to education, but I can say that besides the differences of our reality and our societies from European society, we can say that the struggles we have here are very similar. And we can say that perhaps a lot or more potentialized, considering the different phenomena that we have here in Brazil. But the program of postgraduate in education here at universities in the University of Passo Fundo has been discussing a lot these topics that you have mentioned, considering the demands and the necessity to search for equality and to search for, to get the freedom that we need for our students, and the qualification that we need of what you said to, I wrote here, to be free for the world. I liked a lot about this expression, and I think that this can summarize what you have wanted to expose and to mean for us, that we need to think about how to get this freedom for our students and for us as educators too. I'm not going to talk a lot, but I'd like to thank you in the name of the organization of the event, and in the name of all the people that are here. And we have lots of comments saying that they liked a lot of the talk, and they have been reading your texts here in Brazil, and that we have lots of research using your texts as reference. And let me see here, and up to date. One question that we have here is if you could say something about the control of the presence at school. If you could talk a little bit about this. How do you understand the importance of the control of presence of the students?
So with the control of the presence, you mean so whether students are at school or not?
Yeah, that's it. I understood that the effect of the to control the presence, I understood here as considering online or not at this moment.
Yeah, maybe I can say you can add something, Maarten.
Perhaps if you think that is necessary to have this control, or how do you do this in your context, or how the schools have been doing this?
Well, I have not myself very much experience with controlling whether students are following on the internet or not, or following in the digital spaces or not. But in a more general way, I think that it is important to make this kind of difference, the difference between school time, school place on the one hand, and other kinds of time and place. And so what it seems happened today a lot is that school is home delivered. So it is delivered at home like the pizza and like other things, it is home delivered. And it means that there is no difference anymore in the kind of time and the kind of situation. Everything seems to be in the same time, the digital time, the 24 hours, 7 days a week time. So there is no differences or differentiations in time, and very little differentiation in place, because everything becomes home delivered, so to say. So, and I think that, and home delivered and personalized, because you order your pizza, you will have your exercise, you will have your program, so to say. It is personalized. And I think that it is important to think about today that the school is precisely a different kind of time. It is a time which is separated from the home and from the economic time and from the market. So it is a separate time. And to create that separate time, very often I think we need a separate place. It's not easy to create that time, that separation of the time and the difference of the time. It's not easy. I don't say it is impossible, but it's not easy to create it online, I think. So, and that may be the control, as you said, of being at your screen if you are at home, is maybe something that goes in the direction of trying to make sure that you are not in the family, that you are not at home, so to say, but together on the screen or in the school. So I think it's important and to have this relation also, which is not personalized, but which is around something that we have a collective around something of the world. So that would be what I would add to that.
Yeah, and then perhaps also the difference between being present and presence, and that's the same in an online environment. In the physical environment, you can be present but absent at the same time, or not be present in the present. And I think that's what's the challenge for any teacher in school environment is about, how to draw students in the presence, in that they are attentive. And that's a challenge, and that's continuous work. And that's also what we try to express with try this and try again. And this is part of being what the teacher does. Not only the teacher does, but also what school works try to attempt to create meaningful pedagogical work that is relevant in itself, not just in view of the outcome, but which is meaningful in itself and which keeps students present. And of course, perhaps you have to have some regulations that students are actually at school, but that's for me a bit a different discussion, because that alone is not enough. I think we know a lot of situations where students are in the classroom, but where they are not present.
Yeah, thank you. I completely agree, and we have to consider that what we do can keep the students really connected to the school, what we do as professors or teachers. And we have to say that the actions that we have at school, to be this learning meaningful for the students, are very important to make these connections that you mentioned. And I will call our colleague, Dr. Alberto Fávero, Albert Fávero, to ask you some questions. And Altair is the coordinator of the postgraduate program in education at UPF. And then he is going to ask you some questions. Thank you very much again.
Ok, Luciane, obrigado pelos comentários, né, e também por estabelecer essa conversação aí com nossos amigos, o Maarten e o Jan. Bom, primeiramente eu queria mais uma vez expressar a nossa profunda gratidão pela lucidez e pela profundidade da brilhante conferência que foi há pouco proferida. As suas reflexões e seus escritos nos servem de subsídio para pensar e articular os rumos, os desafios e as possibilidades da escola e das pesquisas em educação. Quero aqui fazer menção a um grande amigo comum, que é o Walter Cohen, que ele é coordenador da coleção Educação, Experiência e Sentido, da qual fazem parte a tradução dos livros já referidos aqui na tarde de hoje. O Cohen, quando diz no livro Em Defesa da Escola, é um interlocutor potente para os que se interessam pela escola, seja para defendê-la ou para criticá-la. Trata-se de um exercício de pensamento que chama a atenção do leitor para um aspecto da escola que parece escondido no universo escolar das competências e na sociedade da aprendizagem, que pretende envolver as instituições. Pensar a escola como escolé, como tempo livre, se reveste de uma experiência e de um sentido profundo, ao mesmo tempo que se torna uma luz no final do túnel, quando percebemos uma escola cada vez mais maltratada, perseguida, abandonada e injustamente rotulada. Concordo com Walter Cohen quando ele diz que Em Defesa da Escola é um texto com claridade, com ousadia e com rigor singulares, pois o texto nos convida a pensar sobre o que a escola tem de público e de comum, desde sempre, e que a torna talvez uma potência para renovar e recriar o mundo, como escreveu de forma lúcida Hannah Arendt há mais de 6 décadas. Trata-se de um texto filosófico, político e pedagógico ao mesmo tempo, pois chama a atenção para o que não pode ser esquecido quando falamos de escola e o que não pode ser esquecido na escola. Num cenário em que a escola, essa palavra velha, cansada, descuidada, criticada, desprezada, depredada, castigada e desatendida, pode ganhar vigor e vitalidade se for representada, recriada, reinventada e tiver um novo sentido, ao ser pronunciada outra vez como questão pública de olhos abertos para o mundo. Enquanto professores, alunos em formação, pesquisadores e pessoas comuns, compartilhamos da posição firme que vocês expressaram nessa obra de defender a escola como uma questão pública. Também nós nos recusamos firmemente a endossar a condenação da escola. E a pandemia nos mostrou isso. Ao contrário, defendemos a sua absolvição, pois acreditamos que hoje, mais do que nunca, em uma época em que muitos condenam a escola como desajeitada, a realidade moderna, e outros até mesmo parecem querer abandoná-la completamente, é necessário e urgente defendê-la como tempo livre, como um lugar que seja capaz de transformar o conhecimento e as habilidades em bens comuns, uma instituição que tenha o potencial para dar a todos, independentemente de antecedentes, talento natural ou aptidão, o tempo e o espaço para sair de um ambiente conhecido, para se superar e renovar o mundo de forma imprevisível, sem ser instrumental. Certamente não é tarefa fácil e não acontece de forma gratuita ou determinada por decretos governamentais. Exige de todos os envolvidos determinação, discernimento, coragem. Requer solidariedade, ousadia e bom senso. Talvez devemos começar com a compreensão profunda e aberta do que seja o escolar em suas múltiplas questões, muito bem apontadas no livro já referido. O escolar é uma questão de suspensão, de colocar entre parênteses as rotinas do mundo produtivo para dar espaço ao tempo livre. Uma questão de profanação, para tornar o espaço escolar um bem público, um bem comum. Uma questão de atenção ao mundo. Uma questão de tecnologia não instrumental ou subserviente. Uma questão de igualdade do começo. Uma questão de amor marcado pela presença e pela maestria. Uma questão de preparação, de estar em forma, de ser bem treinado, de ser bem educado, de testar limites. Por fim, uma questão de responsabilidade pedagógica, capaz de exercer a autoridade, de trazer a vida, de cuidar do mundo. Esta compreensão do que seja o escolar que cria o antídoto e a potência para evitar que a escola seja domada, seja pela politização, pela pedagogização, pela naturalização, pela tecnologização, pela psicologização e mesmo pela popularização. Livrar-se dessas formas de dominação implica em fazer com que na escola o tempo seja criado ao invés de se permitir passar o tempo. E a ordem do dia é a formação em vez do relaxamento. E a formação é entendida aqui como elevar-se além do seu mundo. E a aprendizagem refere-se a expandir o seu mundo. O professor, por sua vez, esse mestre escola, tem a arte especial de disciplinar, no sentido positivo de focar a atenção e consiga desenvolver a arte de apresentar o mundo, de torná-lo público. Essa arte não é algo que se adquire apenas com conhecimento e habilidade, pois se trata de uma arte incorporada, que corresponde a uma maneira de vida, a arte de fazer algo existir, a arte de dar autoridade a um pensamento, de tornar algo conhecido, de trazer algo para a vida. No entanto, para que o professor possa desenvolver tal arte, necessita também evitar ser domado, tanto pela profissionalização quanto pelo discurso sedutor da flexibilização, muito bem abordada no capítulo 4 da defesa da escola. Lamentavelmente, nós vivemos hoje no Brasil um cenário de desmonte da escola pública, que se concretiza de diversas formas. Cortes de orçamento da educação pública, ataques frequentes aos professores acusados de disseminar o marxismo cultural, privatização de setores estratégicos da educação, reformas educacionais importantes alinhadas aos setores empresariais, sucateamento das universidades públicas, cortes nos recursos aos órgãos de fomento que financiam pesquisadores e formação de recursos humanos para a educação, perseguição ideológica, e a lista poderia ser muito longa. Diante desse cenário, e mais uma vez agradecendo a gentileza de poder, na tarde de hoje, conversar conosco e com todos aqueles que nos assistem pelo YouTube, gostaria de deixar algumas questões para fomentar o debate. A primeira delas, no início da conferência que vocês fizeram, apontaram que no cenário atual houve um deslocamento de uma instituição educacional moderna, normalizadora, onde se trata o indivíduo relacionado à norma e ao desejo de ser normal, para o ambiente de aprendizagem personalizado, onde se trata da singularidade do aprendiz e da necessidade de reconhecimento de seu desempenho, competências relacionadas com um perfil permanente. Esse deslocamento, me parece, se intensificou com a pandemia. No mundo pós-pandemia, é possível fazer frente a esse deslocamento? Eu vou fazer todas as perguntas, eu tenho 5 perguntas, se me permitirem. Então, vou para a segunda pergunta. Quais seriam os caminhos mais promissores, ou quais seriam as iniciativas mais potentes para avançar na direção de uma escola como tempo livre, como lugar de igualdade do começo, ou ainda a escola como o lugar onde a sociedade se renova, libertando e oferecendo seu conhecimento e experiência como um bem comum, a fim de tornar possível a formação. Uma terceira pergunta: reinventar a escola como tempo e espaço para experimentar formas concretas para a criação do tempo livre no mundo de hoje e para reunir jovens em torno do bem comum, se apresenta como uma forma de resistência à onda neoconservadora, negacionista, fundamentalista que tem atacado a escola pública e seus professores? Uma quarta pergunta, gostaria de pedir se poderiam detalhar um pouquinho mais que eu acho que é uma distinção importante na conferência que foi feita hoje à tarde, a distinção entre a liberdade de escolha, e faço essa pergunta propositalmente, porque hoje essa liberdade de escolha foi fortemente ovacionada no Brasil como propaganda para o novo ensino médio, e a liberdade de prática e de estudo atentos e sustentados, que implica trabalho de liberdade indefinido, como foi dito na conferência, que a escola pode oportunizar e que foi tanto enfatizado hoje à tarde na sua conferência. E, por fim, o que poderia ser dito para os milhares de professores, de alunos de licenciatura, de pesquisadores em educação no Brasil que se sentem todos os dias violentados, pressionados, precarizados, mas que ainda resistem e acreditam na educação e acreditam também que vale a pena as lutas escolares. Seriam essas perguntas que eu gostaria de deixar e desejar mais uma vez agradecer por estar conosco.
Okay, thank you very much for the very kind words also about the book. You asked a lot of questions. We're not sure whether we understood them well, but we will touch upon a few, and please interrupt us if we go the wrong direction. Don't be afraid to interrupt us. Perhaps first related to this, we indeed do that also in our new book, this distinction between normalization and personalization. And the reason why making that distinction or pointing at that shift is that often today you have the discourse, let's liberate the student from the norm. And if we liberate the student from the norm and we address him or her in her singularity, then we have true education. That's a big part of the discourse, that the norm was an invention of the 19th century. We impose a norm on students, on people. Let's take away the norm, and then we see who the student truly is in our singularity. We think we have to be careful with this kind of discourse, because what we see is that the norm is being replaced by something else, which is, in our view, even more oppressing, you could say. It's also oppressing, and it's the profile that, okay, we do not ask students to relate to a norm, but we ask students to profile themselves, to singularize themselves all the time. Tell me who you are. Show me who you are. How are you different from the one who is sitting next to you? Show me your difference. This permanent differentiation, it's also a power mechanism. It's different from the normalization. It's a personalization, but which is also a power mechanism. That's why we have some difficulties with this personalization, with this constant pressure on students, but also on teachers, to personalize themselves, to show who they are, to show their differences, to make a profile. And making a profile is also trying to show at what points are you different from someone else. Making a profile means that you need someone else to recognize your profile. If you have a profile without recognition, you are nobody. That's what social media shows. If you are someone, if you have a profile without connections, you are a dead end. So it creates new power mechanisms. And so for us, the challenge is, how can we organize education, school education, without falling in the trap of this personalization? Or to put it in another way, personalization in one way or another links the students to her past. It always links you to what happened before. And we think what happens in school or should happen in school is to disconnect this linkage to the past. What should happen in school is try again. And try again means forget about your earlier mistakes. Forget about past recordings. Let's forget about the traces you left behind. Just try again. And try again for us is about school learning. Personalization is often the opposite. It's about linking the student back to her personal profile, to her past.
Yeah. I maybe can take just a second question or another question that you were putting, or that you were asking some clarification about this difference of freedom of choice and the freedom of practice. I don't know if it will help, but so the freedom of choice. So you could say that today, at least in the digital sphere, or in the sphere of the internet and the social media, there is a tremendous confrontation or a tremendous offer, in a certain sense, of options, of what you can opt for, and so of choices, so to say. And as Maarten was referring to the profiling is often related to make choices. You should make choices. You must constantly make choices, and you have to see that your choices are validated by the other, because otherwise it are not good choices. So choices is related to make options for some things. But the pedagogical freedom that we are referring to has nothing to do with looking for options or take options or make choices. The pedagogical freedom is a freedom that I would like to relate to what I like as an image, very nice, which is very nice as an image, which Jorge La Rosa also uses now and then, which is the image of the child that feels or experiences to become able to write. So the child with the tongue between the lips, finding that it can start to write. That's getting a freedom of becoming able. That has nothing to do with choice. It is a freedom that arrives with exercise. So it is a very different kind of freedom. So it's nothing to do with choice or options. So that is the being able, or the pedagogical freedom would for us be something like that, to become able.
Perhaps another thing related to one of your questions is for the future in relation to the digital, to make school. I think for one issue, critical issue is Jan, you can add to that, is how to prevent that digital tools become apparatuses. That's a bit distinction by my Willem Flusser. An apparatus, it's a kind of programmed tool, it's a programmed instrument, and an apparatus needs functionally to operate. You are not using an apparatus is always using you. And I think a lot of digital tools function as apparatuses. Think about this, the smartphone, you become a functionary of an apparatus. I think even some of these tools like Zoom, which we are using now, I think it puts us in a very specific position. It's a bit about exchanging information. Okay, we can have a conversation, but it's not really a conversation. So you feel also here at this moment that we become functions of a program, of a programmed reality. And so what we think is try to find ways to make these tools again into or these apparatuses again into a tool that can be used. And then perhaps, but Jan, you have some examples of that. Schools try to experiment with it, that they use laptops, but that they close down functions within the laptop so that they cannot use to do anything or do everything. So there are very specific small ingredients or pedagogic interruptions being done in order that the tool becomes back a real tool, so that it can be used instead of you being used by it as an apparatus. So I think that's also one of the challenges, that how to avoid that we make learning a kind of pre-programmed reality. Pre-programmed means how to avoid that students are only getting instructions instead of these invitations, how to avoid that they have to perform tasks or functions instead of making or doing meaningful work.
Okay. Is that okay? Is that some answers to some of your questions? We didn't address everything, but okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Masschelein, Professor Simons. Is it possible, just the last question,
Yeah.
about your interview? In an interview published some time ago, you said that you would like to write about in defense of the university. Could you talk something about this? Just to provoke our curiosity for another debate.
Yeah, in defense, of course, it's to a certain extent. It's a similar issue, because in a certain sense you could say, but university is no school, but there are some elements which are part of a school, which are related to time and space, which are to some extent similar, and also some elements of this personalization are certainly also very present at the university. But we have been doing also last year and so on, during the pandemic also, we have been doing exercises with students in which we tried to go, because also here for the university, also students were asking to go back to campus. So not to stay at home, but to go back to campus. They wanted to go on campus. And we wanted to know, what is it about campus that is so interesting for students? Why do they want to come to the campus? And apparently they don't want only to come to the campus to see friends, like also school children not only wants to go to school for the friends. They actually miss the fact that the campus is a very rich habitat of spheres and of places and spaces that give you a certain energy and and create a certain force that help you in a certain sense to get out of the center. So if you stay at home, like students had to be, and so they with their laptop in their student rooms and everything coming through the laptop, then in fact you are the center of the room and you are the center of everything that happens there. And if you want to go to if you want to eat something, if you want to take a bath, if you want to sleep, all these things are in the same room, and so you have to organize and manage everything. So you need a lot of force in order to study, and it all turns around you. You have to make indeed a lot of choices. It's about choices and options, and you have many options and things to do. But if you go to the campus, then many options are not possible anymore, and things have been decided to a certain extent for you. If you are in a seminar room, if you are in a lecture room, you are already helped to become attentive to what is happening there, because you are put in a certain way. You have a blackboard at which you have to look. You cannot do everything. There is no bed. There is no television. So there is a lot of things that the campus creates as a kind of forces to help you to become attentive, and also forces that seem to help to give what is said and what is done also a kind of power or a kind of force to form you. So it seems as if words, as if gestures, as if the things that happen there, they can in a different way affect you. There is a kind of affection, a kind of transformation or affection, which is different. And so the defense of the university, what I'm now saying is not the defense of the university as a kind of particular, let's say, knowledge sphere, but as a kind of very concrete campus, as the university, as a very concrete habitat where you come together to study. And so, and that there is something to. So I'm in fact now defending the campus, maybe rather than the university, but the campus. Of course, the university is also part of the campus.
Should perhaps relate to that and to defend the university, and you wrote a few small papers about that. It's interesting to go back to the original meaning of university as a universitas studi, which was, you had a different universitas, different communities, but it was a community of students, a gathering of students, medieval times, and it was related to, for instance, the cathedral schools. It was quite different. And what was different, or at least that's our interpretation, one of the differences was that it started to become a universitas studi when, the divine book, the book of God, became treated as a text. So it could start to be discussed. It was put on the table. It was no longer something that was protected by a priest or another representative of God, but it was something profane, open for public use. It could be discussed. And I think that movement of profanation and making public use, this is part of the original meaning, in our reading at least, of the universitas studi. We think it's worth discussing about, or thinking about universitas studi in that way. So not look at the university as that big institution with the big buildings and the large auditoria, but those occasions where something is put on the table and becomes something to be discussed. That can be a text, but it can also be a molecule, it can be a biological phenomenon, it can be whatever thing. And for us, that's really important. Even perhaps what we are doing now today, it's perhaps a kind of universitas studi. What we are putting on the table is our view on the school, and what the risk is that you start to criticize it and that you put it off the table and talk in a different way about the school. But for us, that's about what university should be about.
Hopefully it gives you so the taste to continue the discussion.
Com certeza, muito obrigado pelas palavras, muito obrigado pela provocação. Nós ficamos instigados em buscar mais artigos, mais referências sobre este tema e continuar essa discussão com nossos grupos, com nossos colegas, né, nas nossas atividades acadêmicas e também nos momentos em que nós nos encontramos para debater e compartilhar questionamentos e angústias em relação a esses aspectos. Para nós encaminharmos aqui o fechamento e fazermos o encerramento da atividade, eu passo para o professor Altair, para a professora Luciana e depois para o professor Maarten e professor Masschelein para poderem fazerem a sua despedida, sua fala final.
Então, mais uma vez, quero dizer que para o programa de pós-graduação em educação aqui da nossa universidade foi uma honra e uma satisfação imensa. Em primeiro lugar, vocês terem aceitado de poder dividir esse tempo cronológico, mas um tempo existencial importante, e estar conosco nessa tarde de hoje, né? Eu sei que a pandemia acabou não possibilitando uma presencialidade, o que também seria muito difícil, né, pela distância geográfica, mas só o fato de podermos estar aqui conversando virtualmente já é algo extremamente significativo e muito relevante para nós. Parece que muda de tom quando você, além de já conhecer muitos dos textos que vocês escreveram, agora podermos também ouvi-los e poder também fazer perguntas, né? Então, eu me sinto muito, muito feliz de poder estar aqui conversando com vocês e, mais uma vez, agradecer. Só para finalizar, uma das partes da fala de vocês hoje à tarde trata de uma coisa que eu não tinha pensado, né? Mas que ao escutá-los passei a me dar conta disso, né? Porque algo inédito aconteceu recentemente também por conta da pandemia, que foi o fato de que não foram só os que defendem a escola que defendem a escola, mas os próprios jovens estão defendendo a escola. E vocês colocam algo sabiamente no texto quando vocês dizem que os jovens estão defendendo algo de existencial na escola, que não pode ser substituído simplesmente por ambientes virtuais de aprendizagem e em redes sociais. Eu acho uma ideia muito potente para ser explorada, que vocês colocam logo no início da fala de vocês. Eu acho que essa experiência, esse tempo existencial, é algo primoroso que o escolar, a escola como tempo livre, que já tinha sido anunciado lá em defesa da escola, foi anunciado e que agora se complementa com essa fala de vocês de hoje à tarde. Mais uma vez, nossa profunda gratidão, Jan e Maarten, e foi uma alegria imensa escutá-los na tarde de hoje.
And I'd like to thank you again. It was really brilliant to have you with us and to listen to you. And the audience here are saying thank you, and thank you for the reflections, for the provoking talk. And in the name of the university, we would like to have you here in another opportunity, perhaps not online, but to know our campus. That is really beautiful too. And we are sure that you would enjoy the nature that we have in our campus at University of Passo Fundo. And in the defense of the university, we have this wonderful campus that really can connect our students to focus them on the studies. We believe that, and this is we are trying to do our best to have all the students and the teachers on campus. We are trying again to have them here. Thank you very much, and my pleasure to know you here.
Thank you also. So mucho obrigado. We hope to be able to visit Brazil again in a not too distant time, so that will happen. Thank you.
And not just to give a lecture, but really to do some schoolwork together. We think that could be challenging to work.
Schoolwork.
Yeah. Okay. See you. See you. Yeah. Thank you. Muito obrigado.
Bye bye.
Nós que agradecemos pela oportunidade de ouvi-los. Nós os convidamos para uma conferência e eles acabaram participando aqui de um debate com perguntas, com interação. Mas como eu disse lá no início da nossa atividade, eles são, além desses pesquisadores fantásticos, eles são extremamente generosos. Quando eu escrevi a minha tese, eu, num momento de dúvida em relação a uma questão, eu escrevi para eles solicitando algumas referências, textos, e eles não só atenderam ao pedido, como propuseram que nós fizéssemos um diálogo, tal qual nós fazemos aqui hoje. Então, mais uma vez, nós registramos aqui a nossa gratidão pela generosidade, pela atenção de poderem estar aqui neste evento que é organizado pelos alunos, que é um evento público, que se direciona à formação de pesquisadores, à formação de professores, de pessoas que estão iniciando a sua caminhada acadêmica e aqueles que já estão há algum tempo também nessa atividade. Então, mais uma vez, a nossa gratidão e muito obrigado por nos proporcionarem este momento extremamente significativo e formativo. Nós também fazemos um agradecimento especial para o projeto Associação Científica de Psicanálise e Educação, a Secretaria Municipal de Educação de Passo Fundo, que são parceiros na realização desta quarta MEDUC, promovida pelos estudantes do programa de pós-graduação em educação da Universidade de Passo Fundo, que conta com o apoio incondicional da universidade, da coordenação do programa de pós-graduação, da figura do professor Altair Fávero, da direção da unidade da Faculdade de Educação, com a professora Adriana Dickel, e com todos os segmentos de apoio que nós tivemos para que fosse possível realizarmos esta atividade. Então, a todos nós, muito obrigado, e o convite para continuarem prestigiando as demais atividades da quarta MEDUC, que logo mais, às 18 horas, também tem uma atividade inaugural, né, e que contará com o apoio de mais convidados. Muito obrigado a todos, foi uma alegria poder estar aqui participando desta conferência.
Okay, see you. Bye.
Ok, estamos... Marcelo, estamos ao vivo ainda?